Solve the riddle while we sit and watch. Written by Gingers_ha. Read by the Viridian Ghost. Summary. All of the Avengers, in their own ways, end up coming across Peter Parker. Then, each of them meet the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, yet they can't seem to connect the dots. Peter and Tony, who are enjoying the situation way more than they should, decide to see how long it takes for the heroes to figure it out. Chapter 1. Steve. Peter rushed down the street, eager to get back to May's apartment in Queens, so that he can finish all his homework and start his summer holidays. All of a sudden his ears picked up the sound of bone clicking, followed by a yelp of pain. He turned around, his spider sense quietly buzzing at the base of his head as he spotted a corner that led to an alleyway that Peter always referred to as the criminal corner. He turned around on the smooth pavement, a twisting feeling rising as his suspicions were confirmed by the sound of more yelping and crying. He didn't have a suit with him. May had told him to leave it at home so that she could sew up a rip that had occurred at the previous patrol. But that didn't mean that he couldn't ensure that there wasn't something wrong. He would just have to take precautions to conceal his identity. Anybody that he could encounter. As he turned around the corner, squinting down the eerie alleyway, he spotted a rather large male, perhaps 17 to 20 years of age, towering over a much smaller girl, looking to be the same age as Peter, if not younger. He paused, crouched down beneath the large green dumpster as he listened to their conversation. The rest of what happened all too quickly. Peter heard the sounds of gunshots, and his body moved on its own. Next thing he knew, he tackled the man to the ground, wrapping his hands behind him while trying to stop the man as he screamed and kicked. The girl, who appeared to be unharmed, was sobbing in a corner, begging for the man to stop as he kicked Peter off of him, sending the kid flying into a brick wall with a groan. "I guess we're being mean today," he mumbled to himself, as he stood up and punched the threatening man square in the balls and kicked him in the stomach. As the man toppled to the ground, screaming curses, Peter went to check on the woman. "Are you all right?" he asked, acting as confident as he would with his mask on. The woman nodded her head, tears still streaming down her face. "Thank you. He's been following me everywhere for about 2 weeks," she said through the sobs and sniffling. Peter gave the woman, who had told him that her name was Molly, his number, and told her that she could call him if she ever needed some help. Molly smiled through the tears, repeatedly thanking Peter before walking off and hurrying home to her parents. Peter smiled back, waving goodbye as Molly turned the corner, before turning around with a scowl at the man. The man, who Molly had informed Peter that his name was Paul, had since rose to his feet and was looking at Peter with a rather scary expression. "I suppose that isn't the face you make when you want to hit someone?" he remarked with a nervous smile, knowing that he could either get beaten up or risk his identity being revealed. The man snarled, and in that moment, Peter decided that the small couple punches was better than raising suspicion on how a 15-year-old, noodle-looking teenager beat up a buff-looking man. Paul launched himself at Peter, punching him in the nose as he angrily swore at the teenager that he ruined everything and that he should be backing up his homies instead of some useless girl that practically had it coming. A quote that enraged him. The man had gotten a couple good punches, but Peter's enhanced healing would likely have any damage gone by the next morning. But as Paul looked up, his face seemed to drop as he squirmed off and ran before Peter could even sit up, and make a funny quip. "Are you all right, kid?" a voice asked, startling Peter as his head whipped around behind him, for some reason recognizing the voice. A man stood before him, wearing a normal enough outfit considering who it was. The man had a pretty light skin tone, close to being considered pale, with a plain white t-shirt and some blue jeans, a gray cap laid on top of his short blonde hair, masking in his forehead. As he appeared to be rather tall, it must be ripped by the size of his arms. The realization of who it was whacked Peter like a truck, leaving him jaw-dropped. Stood in front of him was Captain freaking America. Peter hadn't seen him since the fight in Berlin, but Tony had informed him that he and the Avengers were working towards a deal to pardon them and reinstate the Avengers Initiative. Peter wiped some blood off his nose, trying to contain himself as he stood up at one at one of his heroes. "I'm okay, thanks. Peter looked to where the man had been. "Shouldn't have let them get away," he sighed, standing up in disappointment. "I told her that I'd get him for sure, but he hadn't come back, or, God forbid, stalk another girl." Peter mumbled as he flicked away some of the blood that had already started to dry around his face. "It's okay, we'll get him. Why did they attack you?" Cap asked, taking off his cap, pun intended, as he looked Peter up and down. "He has been stalking some girl around my age for a while, and I just walked in on him threatening her. I heard a gunshot, and just before I knew it, I just had to intervene. The girl, Molly, went to safety while I held him off," Peter explained, too nervous to lie to such an authoritative figure. Steve smiled at the kid, patting his hand on Peter's shoulder. "You're a good kid. Right morals. What's your name?" he complimented as Peter looked up, realizing that the man had grown a beard since their last encounter. My name's Peter Parker," he informed, trying to change his voice from his usual tone to avoid the chance of vocal recognition. "Well, Peter Parker, nice to meet you. It was good of you to help that girl, but you can't go off fighting guys double your size. You'll get yourself killed," Steve warned, his face rather worried as he gestured towards Peter's nose. "I do that every night," the teenager thought with annoyance. "This? Please, I can do this all day," Peter joked, folding his arms. The sentence appeared to make the hero laugh, though the kid wasn't entirely sure why. His joke, had it been that funny? Had it? "You remind me of myself," Rogers said with a chuckle, unintentionally mimicking Peter's actions as he crossed his arms. "I remind you of a super soldier that fought in a war? Are you able to see right?" Peter remarked, surprising himself at his sudden confidence. Steve seemed to somewhat smile further, placing his hat back on his head. "Well, I was a scrawny kid who fought guys double my size once," Steve retorted, placing his hands in his jeans pockets. I wouldn't say that I'm scrawny," Peter defended, having to lift his neck to look up at the surprisingly tall man. Cap laughed, finding Peter's confidence an amusing change of pace to the normal speechlessness fans would get when he would meet them. "You're a funny kid, and you got a good heart. Roll potential, you know. Stay good," Steve advised, before bidding farewell to go after the man. An hour later, Peter rushed into the lab, clutching his newly purchased rucksack. "Mr. Stark, oh my God, you will not believe what happened to me today," Peter excitedly started, within the second that he opened the door. Tony looked up from the hologram, swiping away as he lifted an eyebrow. "What happened, kid? You got another churro or something?" the man guessed, kicking a chair over to Peter to sit down. "I ran into Captain America," Peter announced, clearly further gathering Tony's attention. Though Stark had told Peter that he was sort of looking forward to seeing his old teammates again, he had admitted to being less than eager to reunite with Steve after their last interaction. "How did that even happen? What's wrong with your nose? Did he hit you?" he asked, slightly raising his voice at the last question. "What? No. He helped me out. Long story. Doesn't matter. We spoke a bit. I thought it was pretty cool, that's all," Peter explained, pulling over some blueprints of his new web design. "Okay, that's good. So, what happened to your nose?" Tony questioned, pulling up his hologram to resume work, as the two of them chatted in the meanwhile. Peter went to explain the situation of what had happened. Tony listened with genuine interest. The man threw the teenager a couple of painkillers, the two of them being used to dealing with injuries after patrol. After the ferry incident, the duo had gotten past their differences, both of them owning up to their wrongs, and whenever Stark felt a bit alone due to the loss of his closest friends and teammates, Peter had been there. So whenever Peter was hurt or wanted to just have some company, Tony was there for him. It had gone to the point where they had just agreed for Peter to come over to the tower after school each day, and occasionally stay overnight on the weekends. The two of them had fallen into an unspoken routine, neither of them ever daring to break it nor bring it up. Peter popped a couple pills into his mouth, washing it down with a glass of water, before waiting a couple of minutes for the painkillers to kick in. Once he began to feel the familiar small sensation of muffled dizziness, he took a deep breath and snapped his nose back into place. He hissed at the pain, his metabolism only slightly reducing the pain that rippled through his face. "You all right?" Tony checked, glancing up from what he was tinkering on. Peter gave him a thumbs up, needing a minute or two for him to compose himself. "Yep, all good, thanks, Mr. Stark," he confirmed before grabbing a couple of things from the small box of parts and returning to the work table. "Mind if you pass me the screwdriver?" the kid requested, Tony throwing the screwdriver over at him without even having to look. Peter caught it with ease, not having to look up, as he thanked the man and got down to work. The team fell into a relaxed silence, the only sound being the occasional comment or the sound of two materials colliding. The two of them had been shocked at the fact that Peter had happened to stumble upon Steve. They had both thought it was rather unlikely for the situation that it would ever happen again. If only they knew how wrong they were. And that was Chapter 1 of Solve the Riddle While We Sit and Watch by Gingers_ha. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be posting the next chapters. Since there are 5 in this fanfic, I'll be posting the other 4 within the month, I would say. Maybe 1 each week. Depends on how quick I can edit them, since I already have all of them recorded. If you have any fanfiction recommendations on what I should podfic, or just any fandoms you want to see, let me know in the comments. I'm open to most. Anyways, this is the Viridian Ghost signing off. See you guys next time.